A conspiracy theory is a theory that there's someone bigger that is pulling the strings.
There are wealthy, powerful families that control everything.
The Nazis are coming, they're here.
Our elections were stolen.
You devil-worshipping Satanist witch!
The rule of law in this country has been eliminated.
There's money to be made here.
People are dying that don't need to.
They are trying to manufacture anger.
I lost everything I ever worked for.
I miss my dad all the time.
This is really pulling people in.
I'm never gonna talk to him again.
How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Sorry for all the delays. You know me and my schedule.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's actually, I was saying to who I don't know who was on with us. Actually, I didn't see, but that it was helpful to me, so it was fine.
Good.
I'm working at a radio station these days. So, how you been?
What radio station?
It's this. Oh, Joe, it's like a dream job. It's this real, true indie radio station, music station. I mean, there's some talk, but it's mostly I'm just talking about music, or I'm talking about the Woodstock Film Festival. I'm near Woodstock, not too far.
Oh.
So.
Oh well, we should talk about Brothers Keeper having its 30th anniversary screening at the Woodstock Film Festival.
I should say so. And since you brought it up, can we say also we've already kind of rolled into the conversation? Is that okay?
Sure.
Because I'm recording. So great. I have really fond memories, and it might have even been the reason that provoked my reaching out to you, is that I have very fond memories of doing a 20th anniversary screening of Brothers Keeper, which is just mind-boggling how that.
I know. Time keeps going by. My children keep getting older. My beard keeps getting grayer. So.
Hey, you look good, Joe. You don't look like you've aged at all.
Brothers Keeper is evergreen.
Well, yeah, sure. But I believe at that screening, which was at the now defunct 92nd Street Y Tribeca location, and we to a sold out crowd, of course. But your daughter was there, one of your children, and yeah. I think she was just kind of getting ready for college. I don't know. You how old is your daughter now? She early 30s?
No. My oldest daughter is almost 29. Okay. But the timing makes sense because she got her PhD, which was a 5-year program, about a half a year ago. Now she's doing her postdoc. So she would have been starting college back then. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I vaguely remember that. But anyway, so let's talk about it. So I actually pulled it up here. I can reference the 30th anniversary of the seminal documentary that is Brothers Keeper. Will be at the Woodstock Playhouse, which is probably their bigger venue, is my guess, one of the bigger venues, October 1st, Saturday, October 1st, 4:45 p.m. prime time.
Yeah, and in fact, not only will we be showing the film, but I believe Jay Unger and Molly Mason, who did the score, who are incredible musicians, who live up in Ashokan, I believe. Will be joining us and playing some music, and so for Jay Unger and Molly Mason fans, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I will totally be able to see you in person because I'm going to be there. I'm doing, for now that I'm up here, I'm, I get snagged into, I shouldn't say that, willingly snagged by Mayra into doing some Q&As.
Oh, good. So you'll do the Q&A?
No, she won't let me do that. She's probably going to, I'm guessing she's doing it, but I don't know. Okay. I can't be certain, but I will be there anyway.
Oh, good. So
I'll come by and say hello. And yeah. So that's happening. Again, that's on Saturday, October 1st, the 30th anniversary of, Anybody from that documentary? I guess is some of the like the attorneys, or who is anybody around? Anybody still around? Are you in touch with anybody?
Well, sadly, almost everyone in that film, including sadly Bruce Sinofsky, my co-filmmaker partner, is no longer with us. The attorney who represented Delbert, Ralph Cognetti, is still up in Syracuse, in the Syracuse area, practicing law, and we're in touch from time to time. But for the most part, everyone's gone. It's very sad.
Yeah, that's a hard part of doing what you do, as well as staying in touch, because you've amassed so many. You've been doing this now for obviously well over 30 years.
Hard to
Just
believe.
do the math.
Hard to believe. I started when I was 4. Started making.
Yeah, right. Exactly, the prodigy. And so you've just amassed a huge number of projects, from features to series to what have you, and the idea that you could possibly keep in touch, and I mean, each project, it creates a community of folks, right? Whenever you do it.
Yeah, I mean, for some projects, you'd be surprised. I'm still in touch with quite a few people, good friendships. On some, some people were the antagonists of the film, so obviously I'm not going to stay friends with people I was never friends with. But
right,
most of the good guys I'm still in touch with.
Well, that's an interesting question then, or begs an interesting question. Has there been a case, if you can recall, where somebody maybe didn't come off so great in the documentary, maybe even had a difficult time with you, but because of that, but maybe has come around and that you have a good relationship with?
That's interesting. Well, there's some pure bad guys that
right.
I mean, to this day, the prosecutor, who actually I had a decent relationship with, the prosecutor in Paradise Lost, John Fogelman, refuses to accept the truth. Just because they let these guys out on an Alford plea doesn't mean they cowardly made him accept Alford plea instead of fully exonerating not just him, all 3 of them. So we've been in touch from time to time when we did some follow-up filming, and from a human standpoint, he's a nice guy, you would say, if you met him at a bar or something, but and he has nothing to do with the case anymore. But everyone involved in that, in the Paradise Lost case, they're just cowards for not fully exonerating the West Memphis 3. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, after 18 and a half years of everyone banging the drum, including my 3 films, and a huge celebrity campaign of people who were really moved by the case and advocated, people like Eddie Vedder and Johnny Depp and Natalie Maines, all this pressure. And Peter Jackson did paid for some investigation and produced some good DNA results that the Judge Burnett, who was the judge on the original case and the appellate judge, which is absurd, rejected all that evidence. There was pressure, they felt pressure of a new trial. And so they would only agree to an Alford plea, which is basically, Damien, Jesse, and Jason had to stand up in court and say that, well, I acknowledge, I accept the guilty verdict the court has imposed, because if we went to a new trial, the prosecution has overwhelming evidence that could convict us, but we publicly maintain our innocence. We are innocent, but we're agreeing to this guilty verdict to get us out of prison. That's how an Alford plea functions. What it does is it makes so these guys had life sentences, and in the case of Damien, a death row sentence, commuted to first-degree murder charges and for time served, and that was the mechanism for them to get out of prison. That, of course, gets them out of prison and Damien off of death row, but they left Arkansas as convicted killers, even though publicly they're maintaining their innocence. Anyway, so, all those guys are involved in a horrible cowardice that, nobody wants to admit that they screwed up so badly. So they're,
Is the Alford plea, is that the same thing Michael Peterson used? I can't, from the staircase, in the.
I can't answer that question, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, I think it's possible because I think he claimed, he got out, but he was had to admit that he was guilty, but he got out.
I think it's different. These guys
Okay,
definitively are innocent. We all believe they're innocent. They
right.
admitted-
Nobody really believes they're guilty, or well,
nobody. Arkansas does
Essentially.
not want to. Arkansas does not want to fully exonerate them because
right.
the going rate for wrongful conviction is $1 million a year. Times 3 defendants times 18 years, they could sue for, a lot of money. And more importantly, nobody wants to admit they made such a horrible mistake. So
He did take it. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Joe. But Michael Peters also, Peterson took the Alford plea as well, which is, after murdering his wife is
right.
It is the opposite situation, though.
But it's a very different situation. That's why
very different.
I want to compare the two and confuse people. Specifically, everyone involved with the West Memphis 3 case,
right?
All the advocates, everyone believes they're innocent, and Arkansas, instead of admitting the mistake, they said, "Well, we'll let you out if you admit to the guilt under an Alford plea," which means they can't pursue compensation, and more importantly, no heads will roll because of the horrible mistakes that were made on this case. And that's just, and look, I've always said, when it happened, I mean, we were down there on August 19th, 2011, when they were out filming for Paradise Lost 3. It was the perfect ending for Paradise Lost 3, of course. But at the time I said it's a very bittersweet. Damien gets out and it was quite ill and might not have made it, either by execution or his health. So it's very bittersweet that they're out of prison, but the fact that they had to admit guilt when they were innocent is horrible from a truth and justice standpoint, from a practical standpoint. For example, I took them to the Berlin and Toronto and film festivals and IDFA. Every time we were on the border, we had trouble at the border because
they're guilty.
Officially speaking, you're letting convicted child killers into the country. So there was always a few hours of experience.
There had to be a screening at many airports just through all 3 films to kind of.
And the most important thing, the biggest tragedy, it means that Arkansas is pretending that these guys are still the killers, and they're not pursuing the real answer. The real killer or killers of
how could they? Right? How could they? Conflict.
Right. Exactly. So what I said at the time, and I still believe it. It's just if the state of Arkansas let 3 convicted child killers out of prison after 18 years, instead of making them serve life, and in Damien's case, stay on death row, because a bunch of Hollywood celebrities like Johnny Depp and Natalie Maines were pressuring them. Well, shame on them if they truly believe.
That's right.
If they truly believe they're guilty, just because Johnny Depp and Natalie Maines and Metallica and a whole bunch of other well-known people were, demanding justice, shame on them for listening to celebrities for letting out, child killers, But obviously that's not the case. So shame on them for not fully exonerating these guys who are clearly are innocent, So anyway, it's crazy.
And I imagine at the time, just to wrap this part up, that they also were there are 3 of them, and they felt at least a couple of them at the very least felt an obligation to each other, that they would do this for the others. The other 2, that if it had just been them, maybe they would have stayed in and not taken the Alford plea. But they were trying to help.
Yeah,
there were families and that were going to die. People are getting older and perishing.
Yeah, Jason Baldwin in particular, to this day, feels very
disappointed,
feels very conflicted that he didn't stay and fight because he thought they were going to win. But Damien's health was really on the edge. The other person who, your original question was, is there anyone you're in touch with who, may not have been portrayed as well as they could have been, or something like that? They've come around. The other person who falls in that category, who's a guy I really hold, I like a lot, but a lot of people misperceived, I think, the portrait of the therapist in Metallica, some kind of monster, Phil Toll. You know, he got a bad rap and felt bad and was really kind of upset with me after the film. And we had a number of conversations and worked through it. And, you know, and so now I actually haven't been in touch with him for a while. This reminds me I should reach out and say hello. But, you know, the 5 or 6 years after the film, you know, the first little bit of time we had a hard time with how people were perceiving his role. But I've always said that guy saved the band. You know, that band was at a crossroads. It would have crumbled without that therapy. And you know, the final process of therapy is pushing your therapist away. So a lot of people misperceived that as a negative portrait of him. And he had, you know, we had to work through that issue.
Therapy.
I had to have therapy with the therapist.
Well, you know, just asking a question like that, it just kind of is a catalyst for talking about some of the films and how nuanced and, you know, rich they are with they're just such rich, complicated stories. And the way they're made, the films are, you know, also illustrations of that, because the films, they hold up and are worth multiple viewings and over time. And then, you know, they have a different impact as a viewer because we're living in a time where they're, you know, again, the Michael Peterson case, maybe you're looking at that differently, or you're looking at whatever else. There's you know, many stories that keep coming back around. Our country culturally, politically keeps changing, and the films that you made and you with Bruce have constantly have a new impact. That's why I kind of also wanted to bring you back on. And Brothers Keeper will have a huge resonance to the new audiences that see it coming up in Woodstock. I think people that have never seen it before are really going to feel like it's a very relevant story.
Oh, I know. That's nice of you to say. I hope so. You know, I try to tap into universal themes and, you know, common human experiences that are expressed through a particular set of characters. So, you know, when they stand the test of time and resonate, I think that's nice. On the other hand, I would say the documentary business has changed so fundamentally. The style of those early films, where you really don't tell the viewer what to think and you allow ambiguity and you allow both sides to have their say and let the viewer decide. You know, for example, Paradise Lost, you know, a good 20% of the people who saw Paradise Lost walked out of the theater, you know, because at that time we were releasing it theatrically, or watched it on HBO, and we heard these comments from people. But, you know, I would say 20% of the people who saw Paradise Lost thought they were watching a film about guilty teenagers and look how weird those guys are. And, you know, and a lot of people didn't see it as a wrongful conviction story. Most did, of course. And it resonated so deeply with those who did that they actually got off the couch and came together in a way that you hadn't quite seen before, of film spurring activism. Tens of thousands of people came together and started this West Memphis, you know, Free the West Memphis 3 support group that was the subject of actually Paradise Lost 2. It followed the original founders of this support group, people who had seen the first film and then started this support group and grew. So to me, the style of filmmaking that I most embrace is this classic verite, where you allow things to unfold and you don't overtly tell the audience what to think, and you allow 2 points of view. You know, the price you pay for that is some people walk away with the wrong idea, but the people who believe what you're trying to show without banging it over their head, it's such a, you know, you sit in the audience like a jury. That's the approach to the film. You know, and allow because when a filmmaker is talking to you and trying to smash a point of view over your head and is so overt about it, it's, you know, it could be a good film, but that's a very passive viewing experience. But when you're listening to the pros and cons and you're not sure what this filmmaker is telling you, and you're evaluating, you know, oh, look, there's no blood at the crime scene. How could Damien have done it, you know, there, if that's what the prosecution is saying? But look how strange he looks. He's looking at himself in the mirror in an odd way. So does that mean he's a narcissist and maybe he did do it? Those are the kinds of things that are in the film. And today, we have such a attack on the truth, and we live in such a weird place. I think that style of ambiguous storytelling and allowing the audience to come to their own conclusion is you know, that style of documentary is actually looked down upon, I think, by many in my business, that you have to have an overt point of view and be very clear in that point of view and kind of smash that point of view over people's heads. So it's interesting. Stylistically, I think the films feel like they're from another era almost, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting getting your take on it, because I mean, I'm certainly not representative of the average documentary, you know, audience person, but because I see a lot and I do see some examples. But you're right. I think it's a much rare case, certainly for broad distribution, maybe especially.
Yeah. And also, I mean, which kind of links to this current show I have coming out on September 21st called
Shadowland, which is going to be on the Peacock network.
Yeah, it's coming out on Peacock. It's very much about the dangers we now face, because we've moved into this new phase where, you know, half the country wakes up and thinks the sky is red, and we can't agree on basic facts. And a lot of that has to do with the mainstreaming of conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And it's a very troubling situation. Democracy, the very foundation of democracy is people from different views and different, people from different, who have different points of view about life, or, everyone comes together and they agree on what's good for the collective. But if you can't agree on basic facts, there's no compromise, there's no dialogue.
There's no foundation.
Right. And we've divided into two camps and have vilified and demonized the other side. And that is a recipe for disaster. That's when totalitarianism comes in. That's when violence comes in, when half the population hates the other half of the population and sees the world very differently, like in stark black and white terms, very differently. That's how things like genocide happen. Like, I don't think that we're going to have a genocide in this country, but we've seen genocide in Europe since World War II multiple times. So
and you did a documentary on a genocide some years ago.
Oh yeah. But that was 1915. But that was
that
was the Armenian genocide. Yeah, film. I'm very proud.
I heard a comedian say today, as I was listening on the radio, those who ignore history are doomed to watch the History Channel. So Shadowland is kind of getting back to your verite roots, it sounds like. Yeah. And maybe this is a platform which kind of is provides a space for going back to that, as opposed to the theater. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, there's so much, the idea that conspiracy theories have gone mainstream, the idea that we're a divided country, the idea that people really don't agree on basic facts, the idea that we vilified each other, that's been done before. So what I wanted to do was go out into the world and find people who believe the exact opposite of what I believe on so many basic issues, and just try to understand where they're coming from, to have kind of an empathetic and compassionate lens towards trying to understand why they believe people on my side of the political aisle, drink blood and, are pedophiles, and, the whole Pizzagate thing and all these, all these crazy conspiracy theories. Because if we don't understand where it's coming from, and we don't understand, if we don't have an understanding of the plight of certain people, which causes them to believe these things, the people who have been left behind, we're never going to solve our larger issues as a country.
And Shadowland debuts on Peacock this Wednesday. As we speak, it's Monday the 19th, but the 21st. So episode 1. or are they downloading, or is it like one of these cases where it's the whole season, or is it
actually on the 21st of September? I think they drop all 6 episodes at
all
once.
6?
People can binge away. That's the new thing.
All right. Well, that's my Wednesday night. Thanks so much for that, Joe. If that weren't enough, you have the 3rd season of Conversations with a Killer next in a few weeks. Actually, it's just in a couple of weeks now that I look at it. October 7th is right around the corner, right after the festival. And this you've done seasons on Ted Bundy, on John Wayne Gacy, and this is this year on Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, the big 3.
The crowd pleasers.
Yes. It's kind of weird that I've become like Mr. Serial Killer. I mean, like my whole, in fact, people call me a true crime pioneer, and now I'm labeled as a true crime filmmaker because true crime is so popular. That whole phrase, true crime, I have a real problem with, like, because it first of all, I started off with an intense interest in crime, mainly because of Paradise Lost and other cases like Richard Glossop, who Oklahoma is about to kill again. I urge people to educate themselves about the Richard Glossop case in Oklahoma, because this is a guy who they've attempted to kill 3 times, and now they're about to kill him again, and he's completely innocent. And I had a show called Wrong Man where I profiled a whole bunch of cases each season. So like wrongful conviction and also victim advocacy. I did a series called The System, where we got into a lot of things about what's wrong with the criminal justice system, and also how to, there's a number of victim issues that have not been addressed. So my entry into crime was more of that, but now I did the Ted Bundy tapes kind of coincidentally, just kind of happened, and it was a big hit on Netflix. And then oddly enough, I did the Zac Efron movie at the same time as Conversations with the Killer. So I did Bundy, but I was doing Bundy more from a social justice standpoint, as much as people will say, well, what does that mean? And like, are you kidding me? But the reason I did the Bundy tapes, before I decided to do it, I asked my daughters, who you just referenced, who are very bright women. At the time, one was going to Columbia, finishing up Columbia. The other was finishing off MIT. So bright women.
Those are good schools, are they?
Yes, they are. Very proud.
Not familiar with them.
Proud dad here. And I asked them. They were home for vacation. I was thinking about doing this project, and I said, "Do you guys know who Ted Bundy is?" And they didn't. And they asked some of their friends, and some of their friends vaguely heard serial killer, but didn't really know much about it. So I thought, for this generation, to retell the Bundy story, because the lessons of Bundy, can't be repeated enough. Just because somebody is charming and good looking and has friends and just doesn't seem like the type of person who would do this, you can't just blindly trust people, because, especially the movie Extremely Wicked, starring Zac Efron and Lily Collins, we see everything through the perspective of the girlfriend who thought he was a wonderful, boyfriend, live-in boyfriend, and her daughter from another marriage looked up to Ted as like a father figure. So to me, doing the Bundy story was about giving my kids' generation to retell the story in a compelling way, so that they remember that lesson, that just because somebody looks and acts a certain way doesn't mean you should trust them. Because, that's a generation where people are getting scammed all the time on the internet, where dates on the internet sometimes end up being somebody who's not how they present themselves, where that poor woman got into an Uber and it was a fake Uber driver, so I did the original Bundy to kind of just have a reason for me to do any crime story. There has to be a social justice reason. And that was the reason for me. And then it was so big that, of course, Netflix says, well, let's do Gacy, let's do Dahmer.
Right. Yeah.
So for Gacy and Dahmer, look, I love the support of Netflix. It's great, so I'm not complaining. But somehow I've been put into this true crime box. And again, to me, that phrase true crime conjures up this image of wallowing in the misery of others, to tell the story. And I don't view myself doing that. There is a lot of irresponsible true crime that's made, but I always feel
you're not one of these
Yeah, I always feel like I have to have some kind of social justice bent to it. So even, the Dahmer and Gacy stories, we look through the lens of prejudice because the prevailing attitudes towards the gay community back then allowed these serial killers to flourish, and threats weren't taken seriously, and they got away with it for far too long because of the prevailing attitudes towards gay people back then.
Or a lot of these serial killers have preyed on prostitutes, many of whom are women of color, and there's a lot of reasons why serial killers have been allowed to flourish over the decades.
Absolutely. I did a series about Sam Little confronting a serial killer, where this incredible author / reporter Gillian Lauren really got access to him, and he got away with it for 40 years. I mean, he wasn't arrested until the 70s. And
Unbelievable.
He is considered the most prolific serial killer in American history, and he mainly preyed upon, women of color working in the sex industry, which is a category of people that law enforcement historically have ignored. In fact, in the 80s, if they found a prostitute, and I know I'm not supposed to use that word, a sex
I didn't know that. Okay.
Well, I'm using the language of the era.
I understand.
But if they found a sex worker, behind an alley in the 80s in LA, they would call it in as no human involved. Which was euphemism, like, we're not going to look into this. It's just another random sex worker who got what you deserved is almost the attitude. So those are my reasons for exploring crime. So to be labeled, Mr. Serial Killer or Mr. True Crime, or it's just so weird because
I don't think,
my early films, as you don't.
Yes. Well, I know your history, and you have been a successful branding yourself, and maybe that's why. So people go see Joe Berlinger documentaries, but they don't know this is Joe Berlinger and the history of Joe Berlinger, because you haven't put yourself in front or ahead of your own projects like other filmmakers have had more success doing. So you're behind the scenes, in other words. And anyway, but I do want to mention that the Conversations with a Killer, since we brought it up, on Netflix, also premieres October 7th on Jeffrey Dahmer. And then finally, another group perhaps that has been historically also not treated as, I don't want to say human beings, but maybe not on the same level as adult people or children. And what other better case than Ghislaine Maxwell, and how somebody like that and Jeffrey Epstein can operate and do what they did over so many years. I mean, extreme wealth helps, of course, but they were young, often underage people, correct?
Oh yeah.
And
the whole Jeffrey Epstein story is nauseating, and that's something I executive produced. I didn't direct, and Lisa Bryant did a terrific job, but that was an important story for me to bring to the screen. So we did Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich 2 years ago. I think it came out. I can't remember. It's all a blur. Part of the blur is not just.
It's a companion feature that's coming out.
Yeah. So we did Ghislaine Maxwell, a deep dive into her trial and how she came to be, the monster behind the monsters is I guess the best way to describe her. Yeah.
And I mean,
I do all the happy family programs.
Right, exactly. Well, that's coming out in the fall sometime.
When my kids and all the cousins were much younger, because we always have a big Thanksgiving, they're all like, "Hey, Uncle Joe, when are you going to make something we all can watch?"
They're still waiting.
They are still. Well, now they're old enough that they can watch it.
That's true. Oh, that's true. That's a good point. And now maybe, what do they make of their Uncle Joe now that they're watching your films, or they have been watching your?
Oh, I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think they enjoy what I think. I think my family enjoys what I do.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you are, at the end of the day, a storyteller, and a good storyteller, and that's kind of what people will take away from a positive watching experience. So again, Shadowland debuts on Peacock September 21st. Conversations with Killer season 3, Netflix October 7th, and then sometime in the fall, this companion series to the Jeffrey Epstein Filthy Rich series will be premiering as well.
Yeah,
and
I don't know if they've announced the date for the Maxwell series.
Right? No, I don't think so. Sometime this fall. Well,
sometime this fall. Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, there's enough coming up in the next few weeks anyway, and then of course you'll be up in Woodstock, not this weekend, but the following weekend. So,
yeah,
if you're around, maybe there are tickets available still. Probably not much longer.
Oh, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm looking forward to my weekend in Woodstock. It's a great part of the world and a great festival.
Yeah, that's why I chose to kind of base myself, or whatever the term, move up here.
Yeah,
it's been great.
Good.
Yeah. And I'm developing for this station a show, which is, since it's a music station, my idea is to kind of do a feature about music and film, and do something like, each episode that I do would be, or segment would be a different theme. And, obviously, like you've done a number also of music oriented documentaries. And so just perfect for, what I'm going to do. So I may tap into your, whether Under African Skies, of course, we mentioned Metallica, Some Kind of Monster. You've had your share also. And I'm sure I didn't get them all.
All the music films.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more out there. We don't have to go into it. I'm just mentioning it because I'm going to come around. I mean, I'm sure to something you've done before and use it as a basis for some episode I put together at some point when I start this thing.
Cool.
Yeah,
that sounds good. I love music and murder. My work kind of divides into 2 buckets: music and murder.
Well, thanks for considering all what's going on. I really appreciate making the time, and
of course.
I
talk to Adam.
Thank you. And I really do get so much out of also multiple, having somebody like yourself come on multiple times. It's really gratifying experience, So let's do it again.
Pleasure is mine.
Thank you. And we'll do it again, I hope, some point.
Right.
When you have a break.
I need a break. On the other hand, I feel very lucky. I mean, I actually have, spent my adult life making films and telling stories and able to raise a family doing that. It's, it's incredible. Like cinema verite, adventures, you get dropped into worlds you wouldn't normally get to see, and the camera's the passport. It's just been amazing, to have spent the last 30 years doing that versus a real job. So it's been great. I cannot complain at all.
Well, and audience members either can't complain either.
I hope so. That's nice of you to say, but I feel very lucky.
No. Thank you very much.
All right, Adam. Thank you.
And have a great week. All right. See you. And I'll see you hopefully next weekend or
that'd be great.
Later this month. All right.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you guys.
Ciao.